So please state your name for the record.
It's Ivan Byard, Byard, and I'm a full-time student here at the Story Arts Center.
And what inspired you to run for the Communist Party?
I also was a candidate in the provincial election in the riding of Toronto Danforth. It was something that I was. It's a good place for young people to talk about, youth issues. Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And what activities have you done in the past in relation to the Communist Party and stuff? Like what?
I've worked on a few different campaigns, such as the 15 in Fairness campaign here in Ontario to raise minimum wage.
Yeah.
I've worked with the Canadian Federation of Students Ontario on their We the Students campaign to make tuition free and also publicly funded and accessible. And then I've also worked with the Canadian Union of Postal Workers. They have a campaign called Delivering Community Power on how to, they have the largest fleet of vehicles in the country, and they also have the most retail locations. So if they transform their economy or their fleet of vehicles and their buildings to a zero emission output kind of system, it would make a huge difference, and it's all publicly owned. And also they want to transform post offices into banks and community centers.
Yeah, so we'll move on to the issues now. So the biggest issue that comes to mind when I talk to a lot of people is affordable housing and healthcare. What is your party going to do in regards to affordable housing with Toronto having this condo market? What is your party
one
going to do?
One of our candidates, Ali Khan Pabani in Parkdale High Park, in this election, he's actually a tenant organizer, so that's his job, and he's been involved in rent strikes in Parkdale, so that's something we've done in the past. Our party, we see elections more of an opportunity to platform, go knock on doors, participate in the debates like the one here at Centennial, and get to talk to people, and less about getting votes. Our party is one of action, and it's about organizing tenants. We work with the Ontario Healthcare Coalition, so they're having a rally in November at Nathan Phillips Square because Doug Ford is cutting the amount of nurses we have in those provinces and also our access to quality healthcare. And he's kind of making it into a two-tier system, something that Kathleen Wynne, Dalton McGuinty, and Mike Harris, Ernie Eves paved the way for. What do our platforms say about it? We think we should build 1 million units of social housing. So right now, Toronto Community Housing, they have more than 100,000 people on their wait list, and the average wait time is more than 10 years. So we think we don't need to so much talk about affordable housing as much as we need to talk about public housing that's a social good. But in terms of affordable housing, we believe in rent geared to income, so passing legislation so rent cannot be more than 30% of someone's income. And in terms of healthcare, we believe everything should be added to the Canada Health Act. So this means dentists, this means pediatrics, eye doctors, prescriptions. And when it comes to prescriptions, the Greens and the NDPs, and to an extent the Liberals, are proposing for public pharmacare. What they're proposing is to make one big buying block that will buy drugs from the government, whereas the Communist Party is proposing that we go into the business as the government, as the people, in producing these goods and making our own generic drugs.
So another question I have is in relation to economics. So what's your party's economic platform for Canada? What will you do to get rid of poverty in Canada and also deal with NAFTA and Trump? What will your party do in regards to that?
So we believe strongly in a full employment economy and in unionized laborers. So one thing we want to bring in is card check legislation. So that means, for example, here at Centennial, our part-timers voted to become part of the OPSU union, but those results have been sealed and has to go back and forth between arbitration and the labor board. Whereas if we had this before in Ontario, before a conservative government in the 90s, as soon as 50+1% of any workplace votes to become a union, then they are a union, and the employer has to recognize them in the collective bargaining. And then also we believe in lowering the work week to 32 hours. We've seen in France in the 90s they lowered the work week to 36 hours, and that lowered unemployment drastically. And also providing a full livable pension by age 60. So that means we see less, you go to a Tim Hortons or a Walmart today and you're going to see, people in their 60s, maybe even people in their 70s. Yeah, exactly. We think these people should not be, working for minimum wage just to get by. And there's always this thing. Oh, they want to be social. Well, then we should have community centers and social programs and services.
So would your party be in favor, let's say, guaranteed income or universal income?
Yeah, we believe in a livable wage. So that means we want everyone to be able to work, and we want to transform the economy so people are able to work, are able to participate in the economy, because we believe in working people should have the power. And for those who absolutely cannot work, long-term care should be provided. There should be a stipends, even for students. We don't think OSAP should be done away with, but we also don't think OSAP should pay for tuition either.
What will your party do in terms of climate change and stuff?
Climate change?
Yeah,
we have a fully costed plan on how to reduce carbon emissions by 50% by 2030. And this centers around mass transit, so rail, and also for commercial goods, also using rail, and then closing the tar sands, phasing that out. In Ontario, our electricity, specifically in Toronto, it comes from Niagara Falls. We built a natural gas plant at the bottom of Leslie Street that we don't really need that surplus energy. And so we don't believe in developing the Ring of Fire, and we believe strongly in reducing the military budget, because that impacts our economy strongly. But there's lots of proposals that we support that are coming from unions, like I talked about the postal workers proposal, and also Unifor, the retirees in Oshawa GM. They're calling for if Oshawa GM is going to leave.
So would your party be in favor of something like a Green New Deal, let's say, for example?
Well, we call it the People's Agenda, and you can find it on our website, and also on peoplesvoice.ca, which is Canada's socialist newspaper.
What about LGBTQ rights and mental health? What is your party going to do in regards to getting better funding for mental health care? Because that's a big issue here on campus.
We believe that mental health should be added to the Canada Health Act, so it should be a social good and universally provided for free. We don't believe in private insurance plans. We believe that creates a two-tier system. And as far as LGBTQIS rights, we believe strongly in criminalizing hate speech. We saw, 2 weeks ago, that there was this rally in Church and Wellesley in Toronto.
I saw that.
And so we participated in the blocking the march. And we believe strongly in enforcing the legislation that exists, but also strengthening it. And we believe universal social services, like we see with homeless youth, disproportionate amounts of minority groups, and we see the same with our jail system, right? And so we need to look into the systemic issues that cause it, like mental health, like housing, and like employment, and providing like social services, community centers, making community hubs, drop-in programs.
So I'm going to pack 3 questions into one. So what is your party going to do in regards to criminal justice reform and prison reform, transit, and military? So what is your party going to do?
So on the military, we believe strongly in reducing the military budget. Right now it's $20 billion annually, and it's set to increase by 73% over the next 10 years. We believe in reducing it by 75%. If you look at some of the procurement deals that are going on right now, for example, for fighter jets, our government's looking into getting F-35 fighter jets.
From Australia,
that would make us, again, a nuclear-capable country. So we believe strongly in, Canada hasn't signed the test treaty ban, and we should sign that, as well as the non-proliferation of intercontinental ballistic missiles deals. There's lots of, international trade covenants and stipulations that we could be signing on to that would block deals like with Saudi Arabia. As far as transit is concerned, we believe, look at what's happening out west. Greyhound is leaving behind all these cities in the prairies and in Alberta. We believe in intercity travel. VIA is way too expensive, and it's a private-public partnership. It should be publicly owned. It should be, I guess, in this stage of Crown Corporation. And we should invest in high-speed light rail, invest in our transit. There's a QP local in Toronto that's calling for the TTC to be free, and these are TTC employees.
Yeah, I've heard more calls about that.
So we support that, and we think that transit should be 100% publicly funded, not paid for by user fees. And people need a way to get to work. Metrolinx is also a public-private partnership, and it should be a utility, public good.
So why do you believe in all this, though, as a member of the Communist Party of Canada? Why do you think this is the right way to go yourself? Why?
Well, we have examples of this in Ontario. You chose to go to a public community college, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You have the option to go to a private career college, and it's the same. You can take the TTC or you can take Uber. We see that it's what are our choices, what are our priorities, and we've seen different governments have different priorities. We've seen what austerity has done and its crippling effects, and we've also seen, for example, countries like Cuba, where more than 70% of their GDP is invested into healthcare and education. They have a higher literacy rate than the United States right now.
Yeah, 99.9.
And this is a really poor country because of the illegal economic warfare with the blockade. It was a struggle to get public health care in Canada, and we're gonna have to struggle to expand it, and that goes for all fronts. Like in Ontario, we worked for a long time to raise the minimum wage. We didn't get it to where it needs to be, but we still jumped a great deal, and Ford wasn't able to reverse that.
So I believe the Communist Party of Canada, or this might be the Marxist-Leninist Party, you line with Cuba publicly. Is that kind of the idea?
Yeah, myself, I've been on the...
Yeah, I've been to Cuba myself on a vacation.
No, I've been on the Che Brigade,
the Che
which is
Brigade.
a volunteer work
wow.
brigade that runs every year. So I went and I worked on organic farms in Cuba. I toured the eastern part of the country, Santiago,
Yeah, I've been
Sierra
there.
Maestra.
Yeah, great place. Yeah.
And we were able to speak with people, go out on our own, visit different factories, see the working conditions, speak with trade union representatives, people from the arts, and we actually had the chance to work on farms, go
That's
to
great.
schools, and you'll see like in Cuban schools there'll be dentist offices,
Yeah.
and they'll have
This sort of
healthcare
ties
clinics
into the
and
question
farms.
of China, though. So with the human rights situation in China and Canadian citizens being detained in China, what would your party do to get them out?
Well, our party's not going to be elected on October 21st. But what about the human rights situation in Canada? We all
Canada?
saw. I don't want to play this game of.
No, it's okay.
But right now, Huawei, the CFO Meng Wanzhou, China's largest private telecommunications firm, she's being detained, and we think that Canada's doing that on behalf of the Americans, and we're going to extradite her to the U.S.
Well, obviously,
The
yeah.
crime that she committed was trading with Iran. The United States has pulled out of the Iran deal, but Canada still signed on to it. And last year, 2 years ago, the CEO of Royal Bank of Canada, he was fined by the U.S. for making trade deals with Iran. RBC is like one of their big investor
Do you
banks
feel like
for
I'm wasting
deals.
your time right here interviewing at all, or no?
No, this is fine.
Okay, just making
but,
sure.
we've seen human rights abuses in Canada. They're really serious. Like, we saw the RCMP go and violate the sovereignty of Wet Sweat Territory in BC so they could expand the liquid natural gas camp. Our party is actually, well, not our party, the People's Voice newspaper is having a forum in Toronto on what's going on in China right now. What's going on right now in Shenzhen.
Yeah,
there was a member of the progressive Pakistani Canadians who went there on a fact-finding mission. And so on October 28th at Oise, there's going to be a public forum for a chance to people to hear to people that have been to China and what their reports and findings are.
So does your party believe in funding university completely, like no tuition, everything's publicly funded? So what would your party do in terms of that? Because that is a big issue for students, such as yourself, paying for tuition, and Doug Ford getting rid of funding for people who are under $50,000. So
Well, we last year we saw a lot of marches across the province in Ontario. We saw walkouts in March. We saw actions at Queen's Park. We saw people occupy the at the time Minister of Post-Secondary Education's office. And other MPs' offices were occupied. And so we have to continue to mobilize students and get students to have class consciousness and fight for their issues. International students are really being used kind of
$56,000.
Yeah, exactly. And with no assistance, but we also domestic students are paying a lot, and they're taking on what the average student debt right now for domestic students $30,000 after they graduate, just for a 4-year program.
I think it's in the United States it's like $3 trillion in student debt is owed just by 40 million.
And so we believe in writing off that debt. People shouldn't have that burden. They shouldn't. Education's a social good. We need educated workers. We need skilled workers. And it's a community first priority. And what the Conservatives do, and to an extent what the Liberals did, they're in power for a long time in Ontario, is they make barriers to education and they make it less and less accessible.
So what about Indigenous affairs? What is your party's platform on that?
We believe Canada is a prison house of nations. So we believe that English Canada does oppress the other nations in Canada, including First Nations with or without treaties, Inuit peoples, Métis nations, and Quebec and Acadia as well. So we believe all nations in Canada should have the right to self-determination, and that means full sovereignty up to the right to secession. If we look, the government's still fighting Indigenous people in courts. There's still taking away
the
children,
trial court. Yeah.
and lots of natural resources and land and wealth is being held in trust by the federal government.
Yeah.
And that should be turned over to those nations.
So
they
we
should have
give them
full
back their
sovereignty.
lands that were promised.
Yeah,
in the
any
treaties,
land claims should be settled.
Any land claims should be settled.
Yeah.
Okay. The other question that I have is in relation to the U.S. So how would your party deal with the United States and their old military alliances such as NATO? Because I understand your party is in favor of withdrawing from NATO and decreasing military spending.
Yep.
But how would your party deal with a president like Donald Trump? I know you're not going to get into power, but let's say theoretically.
Well,
let's play that
we
exercise.
hold. I participated in a protest last month. It was the International Day of Peace, which is a UN recognized day, and we participated in a protest outside the U.S. consulate in Toronto, and have been to lots of protests outside the U.S. consulate in Toronto, and I'll continue to do so. I believe Canada
And I'll
should
be there
leave NATO.
covering it.
I believe the United States is an aggressor nation, and they have tons of human rights abuses against their own people.
What would your party do in regards to dealing with, let's say, electoral reform? What would your party do with that?
We're in favor of mixed member proportional representation. But we also believe that this would be a really good thing for Canadians and to have people's voices heard. But at the same time, we need to broaden the conversation beyond just electoral reform to democratic reform. We need to look into adding things like access to healthcare, access to public education, access to housing, to whatever constitution. As well as looking into the Senate, reforming the Senate, having the right to recall, and
be able to vote for senators, like the United
we
States.
believe it,
like
and we also
abolishing it.
and we believe First Nations, Quebec and Acadia should have guaranteed seats in the Senate,
seats,
and the right to veto over anything pertaining to their nations. And we also believe in lowering the voting age to 16. Something we've been calling for a long time.
So as a young person in politics, so how old are you? I'm 21, so you're
I'm 21.
21, so we're both the same age. We're both young people. How do you say for young people to get more engaged in politics?
You know what? It's people that are even younger than us that they're giving me a lot of energy. Like in Ontario, in the high school students, we saw walkouts against the changes to sex ed curriculum, to the changes in classroom sizes. We saw students go to the March for Action on Climate Change. So young people, they know what needs to be done, that decisions aren't made just at the ballot box. And then we need to organize students. Nothing's wasted in organizing young people. We've seen the postal workers put efforts into unionizing precarious workers, such as what's it called?
I don't know.
Fedora? The Fedora bike workers have been
yes.
organized by the postal workers, and they're looking to going into other precarious sections. So we have to work with student unions, trade unions, community organizations to get unionized jobs, full-time jobs, and to fight for free tuition and other youth rights.
So is your party in favor of the current sex ed curriculum that was proposed under the Kathleen Wynne government?
Well,
More
yeah,
a little different, I'd imagine, though, like more. What is your party's platform on sex ed, let's say, for example? Because that's a big issue for a lot of people.
We believe in prioritizing teaching consent and also teaching about the full spectrum. Our full platform, for issues like this, I don't have anything in front of me right now.
No, that's okay. It's on your website.
I have the short platform in paper, but we have like a full longer platform, and then we also have our party's program, which is like 200 pages long, and that's our full
that's your full
vision
thing.
for socialism in Canada.
Yeah, socialism in Canada. Do you have any more time, or do you got?
If you got a few more questions.
Yeah, I just got three more.
I'll
finish up. So the other question that I have is in terms of pipelines. What would your party do with that?
New pipeline construction would mean more activity in the particular bitumen and tar sands fields in the Athabasca field, and we're strongly against that. That would mean more boats going into the port of Vancouver, more chances for pipelines to spill. So we are in favor of rail, but we're also strongly in favor of phasing out activities in the tar sands and with bitumen. You know, syncrude is not the cleanest resource that we have, and we can invest in hydro we already have, and even solar to an extent.
So do you think socialism as it is will ever take off in Canada and that will make the transition to communism? Do you think that's realistically a thing? Do you think that's ever going to be a thing?
Yeah,
or will transition to socialism?
Yeah, I think it's realistic. You know, the transition to capitalism didn't happen overnight, and it didn't happen just in one place, and it wasn't a spontaneous event. And I think, these are developments.
Because you have the NDP, which are technically socialists, but not really.
Well, I don't think. I'm a political economist. I don't think.
They're not really
electoral.
socialist.
No. It's not so much about what the NDP's positions are. It's just like, electing one government, one part is not going to change the dynamic means of relations to the means of production. So I do think there'll be socialism in Canada, but it's more about the fight for socialism, the fight for workers' rights, the fight for worker power. Socialism means democracy, and it means working people in the driver's seat. So and also real truth and reconciliation, and a real nation-to-nation relation with all the nations in Canada. We've seen victories recently. In places like Nepal, Portugal, Greece. Communists have been elected there. There's communists elected in South Africa. I don't think this is unrealistic to see. I think every time there's been a revolution of any kind, it's always a surprising event. So.
Yeah. And the last question that I have is sort of dealing with farms. So how do you deal with supply management and farmers and protecting their rights?
We believe in especially protecting small farms, and believe in breaking up the industrial farms and the big monopolies. We look what happened with Harper and the wheat board, taking away the wheat board. We do believe in supply management. We think this helps farmers and also Canadians. But we believe in loans for small farms and family farms. And having kind of a bank set up for that. This is again one of those things that's on the full.
It's all on the website. I know. I'm just kind of.
We do have stuff on organic farming, what kind of pesticides should and shouldn't be used, and also we see examples and different farming practices and techniques. But what's going on right now isn't about providing food for people, providing energy. It's about providing profits. So.
Okay, that's fine. All right, thank you so much, Matt.
All right, take care.